Hello and welcome to another ARCHLine.XP webinar. My name is Untitled. Over here is our resident architect, Mr. Illés.
Hi there.
Today we are going to continue our journey into the new features of ARCHLine.XP 2020. Last time we looked at the visual design and material settings features, and now we are going to look at documentation. Illés, can you tell us in a few words what exactly are we going to look at?
Well, we will talk about documentation parts, but not necessarily only documentation parts. We will also talk about how to handle complex drawings with irregular shapes,
Yes.
and also how to work with external files. So, well, there's a lot to cover, so I think let's just go and start with that.
Yes. As always, if you feel like that you need to discover something more in more detail, you can ask your questions on the right-hand side next to me. And let's dig in. So, what kind of projects did you bring us?
Well, the first thing that I would like to represent with the new version is that when you have a building or a landscape or anything that you design in ARCHLine, and it has a non-regular, 90-degree oriented drawing that you would like to work with, but something like this, for example, which is, by the way, a project from one of our users, which we are very, very thankful for, then you might need to handle the content as literally you would handle, a piece of paper on your desk. When you
Yes.
when you work with something like this, you actually just grab the paper, rotate it a little bit. You use the ruler and then you rotate it. And this sort of ability is kind of necessary for simple work without having to continuously trying to rethink what you have in a regular coordinate system. Now, the thing here is that when I would like to create something like, for example, create a wall like, for example, this one. Let's just create similar to this one, and I would like to make a wall which is actually kind of horizontal in my thinking, but it's actually not horizontal on the screen. Then it can be a bit difficult, because then you need to use either some of these helper tools to make it parallel with something. So it would be just simpler, easier to rotate it and then work with the horizontal.
How do you do that?
So for that, you actually have this view tool here, and it's called the rotate view option here. It has three options. The first one allows you to determine what is horizontal. Now, when you pick 2 points on the drawing, then the software will understand that that's the horizontal line, and it automatically and instantly aligns the drawing with that. This is actually not changing the building orientation itself. It just rotates the drawing itself. I mean, like literally just a piece of paper. As you can see, the perspective did not change, so the building itself did not rotate. So it's only for work. So when now I would like to make another version of this, let's say I would like to create a similar to this one on the other side, and I've just started, see now horizontal is horizontal,
Yes.
and perpendicular is perpendicular, and so on. So I can just simply easily work with that. But then comes the time when I would like to switch back, because I would like to work with the original orientation. So in that case, I go back and either use the the reset orientation. Well, in that case, the software will just go back. This is what happens. And then whenever I would like to rotate it again and define another type of horizontal line, like for example this one on the corridor, then I can go back again and say rotate and pick 2 points, and then that's the new horizontal. You can at any time define a new horizontal line by picking up 2 points, and then the software will just keep rotating this content. And if you just made a mistake, I just did make a mistake, then I just picked the 2 correct points, and then now everything is fine. But to be able to switch there and back without having to continuously redefine what was the previous horizontal and what is the current horizontal, there is actually the tool to swap between those two options, the latest horizontal and the original orientation.
Is there any way that you can shortcut that swap tool, so that way
Yes.
you can do it, toggle it anytime you want?
Yes. I like to use that. You can, just go back here and say you can set up a keyboard shortcut. This is, by the way, this works with all the commands. You instead of starting the command, you right click on the command, and then you will get this keyboard shortcut option, and then you can define that. I don't know. Let's say this is Control
Shift R maybe?
Shift R, for example. Yeah, let's say it's It's okay. The software didn't say there's a conflict. So I just say Control Shift and R, and then it rotates and it swaps, and then I use Control Shift R again, and it swaps back. So I just shortcutted the swap command with this Control Shift R.
Just a reminder, what happens with the north direction?
Well, just as you couldn't see the building rotating, it is not rotating the building. It does not make anything with the world. So the real north did not change. It actually kind of, we could say it rotates with the building. So you won't experience any sort of change in the how the sun behaves around the building and so on. So there is this. This is what we call the project north, and this is and the real north, and I mean the literal real north. The project north, the drawing north, is what we could say is always from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen. This is kind of how the software understands what vertical and horizontal is on the drawing. And there's the real north, which can be defined with this tool here, which is the north direction, and this is something completely different. So when you rotate the drawing, when you do this, what I just did, you won't kind of demolish the orientation of the building on Earth. So this is absolutely good for all sort of editing without having to think of what have changed with the real orientation, because it won't change.
Staying on the topic of this multi-story building, I understand there's something new about managing the floor structure.
Yeah, just to have a quick look through this building, as you can see, it has like 4 or 3 different levels with different coloring and so on. So there's a very easy to distinguish which is which. But when you work with a building like this, when you have multiple floors, especially with colors, then it could be a very sensitive point when you would like to see all the information that were designed there. Now what I'm talking about is you can go to the settings of the software and you can set up how the things on the inactive floor are represented. Now the default setting is a replacement color. This is what we will see.
Which should be a grayish color, right?
Yeah. When I go and enable this floor, I mean the first floor, which is this one here, I can see everything gray. Now, just as here, all furniture, seats and things like those were represented in yellow. And this sort of information is not that obvious on the other floor now because it's all grayed out. So to bring back that sort of depth of detail, but still being able to see that it is actually belonging to another floor, not this one, you can use another option, which is there for you. You can change this from a replacement color to halftone. If you do that, you just say OK. Then the software represents the other floor just as the same as before, but in a halftone. So it's not that vivid than the rest of the drawings. So these vivid things, all the pure black, pure colors are belonging to the current floor, which is now a ground floor. And the other things, which are kind of grayed out, but not losing the color, the halftone represented, those are belonging to the other floor. Above or below, it's not important. They are just belonging to another floor.
Let's stay on the topic of representation and visibility. What happens with the multi-layered walls or wall structures? Well,
I just remember there's something else that I wanted to show you here. It's actually you can switch between floors. As you might remember, you can just go up and down between floors. And there is an important thing that if you control click on any of these buttons, you can do the same thing with the inactive floors. So up and down changes the active floor, and control up and down, I mean these buttons, will change the inactive floor. So you can use the same kind of page swapping ability between inactive floors as you could do with the active floors.
Returning back to this topic about the framed wall structures, how do you represent them? Because by default, you can build up obviously a very intricate wall structure, but you won't be able to see the structure. So how do you make them appear?
Yeah, well, we have this building here, which is again a building from one of our kind user. We are very thankful for that. This is actually from a northern country, and this represents a building with wooden framing inside. Now, in case of designing something like this, it could be an essential part at any time of any part of the design to be able to easily represent what sort of structure we have there, or perhaps I forgot to set up the proper framing. This is something that you can easily see on the 2D drawing as well, but how it was laid out on the current wall itself can be always easier visualized in the 3D. So to be able to do that, the software has this option here in the Build 3D Model panel, which is called the Wall Framing Visible On. Now I just enable that and I wait for the result. The software actually recreates the representation, updates the representation of the same building, but this time wherever it finds wall framing, as you can see, those are appearing over there. The software will represent them with only the framing itself. Now, in case I forgot to do something with a wall structure like these or these perhaps, well, perhaps these are not even framed wall structures, but everything that has no framing will be represented as solid, and everything that has wall framing will be represented with its wall framing, which could be very good for visuals, which could be very good for documentation, representation, and any sort of other reason. When you go back and you just use the same option again, you go back to the Build 3D Model and you just disable this option. You go back to the full solid representation whenever this building has real layers of the walls. Those will be represented together with the wall framing. So the wall framing actually won't disappear. It is just represented inside the layers in this case.
That's right. Now you can say that so far not much has been said about documentation.
Yeah.
But this is going to change now, because we are going to look at another tool which is able to document the items on an item level. Because previously we talked about schedules, but now we want to see what happens if I want to just document one particular part of my project. So let's talk about tags.
Yeah. For the tags, I actually have another building, which is for. It could be also good for representation, for the representation of the rotate view option, because this also has a kind of very generic or non-regular layout. But this time we use it because of its layered walls, and the layered walls are something that you represent on the drawing, but sometimes you would like to have an information like this, for example, here. Mm-hmm. So how can you do something like this? Which actually is also connected with the building itself. I mean, whenever you change a part of the building, this should be also updated. So let me just remove this here and recreate it so you will understand how it was done. This is something that you will find in the documentation part, and it is called tags. If you are familiar with the schedule system in ARCHLine, this could be something even faster to understand and faster to learn, because those two, the schedule and the tags have similarities. But the tag is actually something that you can place on a building part, or selecting a building part by telling the software that you would like to, I don't know, tag a wall, a door, a window, or whatever option you have here.
Yes.
I will tag this wall, so I just select the wall, and I will use these options. I will also tell you how to build up something like this, a parameter list. But now I will just use my parameter list, which I have created previously. So I just say OK. And then I select this wall. Now the software places the tag automatically into the click point. And because I don't like the position of that, I can just simply move it someplace else. And I can even add a so-called leader, which is something that you can click here, and then the software, just points to the original item. So this leader or pointer line is something that will follow wherever you move this new information tag. It will always connect it with the tagged item.
Am I able to add breaking points into the line, the leader?
Yeah, for that you need to click here and say you would like to insert an endpoint, and you can even use, just as in case of a wall, a line or a polyline, you can just select that and you can say that you would like to visualize an arrow at the end of this whole thing. So I just disabled that. So this will follow the two items. If you move the wall, it will follow the wall. If you move the tag table, it will follow the tag table. So now the content, why we have this content here, is is because we have chosen a specific tag, and you can actually create tags. You can tell the software how a tag looks like. In that case, you just click here and you say that, okay, now to edit the wall tag, which has general properties, calculated values, and IFC beam values, and so on. Those are something that you can select and put it back here. Or when you don't like something, or you actually like it, but in this specific case you don't want, you can disable the visibility, or you can just completely remove that thing from there. This is how I actually added the wall layers. And the wall layers, what it does, actually it looks at the wall and it collects all the wall layers and makes a list of them with their thicknesses.
Where is that information coming from?
That information is coming from, let me just close this, it is coming from the wall layers themselves. You just go and you edit the compound walls, and all those information with their thicknesses are properly listed here. This is where you can also edit them, and this is where actually you can build up a multi-layer wall with the function priorities and hatching and everything else, and all the materials. Now about materials, that is something that you can also find in case of the wall listings. So for example, this wall, actually that appears over there, as you can see. Now this wall has, as you can see, an RAL, very specific traffic red color material on the outside. So if you click here, you can not only see this information, but if you see this painter bucket, you can actually just select something else, and you can tell the software, okay, now from this point on, list this as the exterior material, and in that case the software will also change the item. So as you can see, the information is interlinked with the item, and then when the item changes, that changes the information, or when the information changes, that changes the item itself. So that's a bi-directional connection between the tag and the tagged item.
If we can go back to the floor plan, I saw that you have a piece of text linked to an item. How does that work?
You mean, yeah.
I mean the lamp over there.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, this lamp information is also, well, this is a new feature that came together with the text. So now the text is also able to, you just type, I don't know, partition wall, and then I say, okay, I just place this text here. And to make it more obvious, I will just click here and I just add a leader with this option, and then now those together are connected. And whenever I move this information, this will be always connected with the original item. And when you move the item, that will also change it. If you remove the item itself, you erase it, it will also automatically change the connected information, because they are bi-directional linked. Yeah.
Perfect. Now let's talk about some of the export formats. And one thing that comes to mind is the consignation and quantity takeoffs. Yeah. I understand there's something new here as well.
Well, this building has quite a few doors and windows and walls and everything else. So we will talk about the consignation. The consignation comes with a new possibility. This is actually in the documentation. You can find it here. The consignation options, the quantity takeoff options, come with the RTF listing and the RTF list templates. Now, an RTF file, I'm not sure how everyone is familiar with the RTF files, but those are actually documents that can be edited with Word, with OpenOffice, with whatever word processor you have. That's a kind of open, easily editable document format. So now the reason we chose this is that it is editable with many different word processors, and it also gives you the possibility to create a list of your building parts. And I will only list the windows, for example. Your building parts, and when you say OK, and the software actually creates a document, a multi-page document of in this case, your windows. And this is something that you can save on your computer. Let's say this is a consignation of consignation of Windows. And webinar. Okay, I just saved that. So this is something that, as you can see, the Word automatically opens up, and we can see a nice layout of a consignation of my windows with all the information, efficiency calculations, count. This means that actually for this specific window, which has a very custom shape, I actually designed two-piece and it has this sort of specific material and all sort of information. Now this type of information that I can find here, those are all the bin values that you can fill up with the window. And there are others, like for example, when you select any of those windows here, like let's just go here and you go to the properties and you go to the built-in details, you will be able to find other options like frame type, exterior seal, and so on. Those are you know, values that you just type a text there, which later you would like to see in the consignation. Now, whenever you create a consignation like this, the software will summarize similar items, and it will go and place a representation of that, and then it will switch to the next one. It will collect the information, will place another one, and so on and so on, and you will have a nice list of doors and in this case windows or whatever else you would like to create and currently placed in the project. Now with this one, not necessarily only the information is something that worth talking about, but also how it builds up, why it looks like this, and what sort of information is calculated, and how could I create something which is custom made for my company with my company logo. Perhaps I don't want to see the reference name and reference ID, but I would like to see all the rest. Now these things are coming from what we call templates, and those are here, the RTF list templates. And now you can see that the software is able to set up several different templates for several different type of items. And now when I would like to see where my template is, in case of the window, I just click here and then the software tells me that this is it. And I can select another one. So how it goes is you can actually edit those in a simple word processor. You can say that, okay, I would like to see how it looks like. And this is how it looks like. You can add, you can remove lines. You can just shuffle information, place them to another sort of layout. So if you actually have a specific word template that you use for consignation, like this style of consignation, you only need to put these parts to the proper place in your layout, save it as template, and then select it, and then the software will use that. The software will actually fill up these values that you can see here if you keep them here, or change the font style, for example, or the coloring or the layout of this. The software will react that, and it will fill up your template.
So that way you can fully customize how the export format looks like.
Yeah, that's right.
And speaking of exports, there's one thing that always is bugging me. How do I back up my projects to an online server? Or any kind of surface where you can back up? Because sooner or later we are going to talk about offline copies of your project and exports. But that's a very interesting thing you can talk about regarding backing up your projects to the cloud.
Yes. Well, for that, I will enable an option. Now we are actually talking about what we call the Google Drive backup option. And it is good for backup, and it is also good for sharing your project between computers. If you use multiple computers, then you can also use this option. That's how it goes. Normally, without any sort of cloud solution, whenever you do something on your computer and you push save, software will save that project or document or whatever you have on your local drive, which now in this case the software always telling me that now we are working in our webinar folder, in our demo projects, and this is the name of the project which we are using now. And if I push save, this project will be updated locally on this computer. But if I would like to make a cloud backup, I go to File and I say, okay, Options. And then here in Open and Save, there is an option for Google Drive. And there is actually two options for this. The download folder. This will be important when we would like to recover something that we have backup as a backup in the cloud. And first things first, I need to enable this project backup to be able to push it to the cloud. So this is what I do. I enable this project backup, and then I say okay, and then I make changes, and then I just click on save to save this project. And then now what happens is that if I'm signed into the cloud, and I am, in that case the software will open up this upload dialog, and it will automatically push this information into the cloud. Okay, so how does the software know which Google Drive account should it
That's a
use.
good question. Maybe I
Which-
have several Google addresses, which
Yes.
I do.
Yes, you actually do have. I also do have a few Google accounts for several different reasons. So to be able to log in and tell the software which account you would like to synchronize your drawings for, your projects for, there is another option which you will find in the file and options. I mean, sorry, this is the place where you can enable and disable, and where you can find these options. It's in the tools. And there's the download from Google Drive and log out or log in to Google Drive. Now I can log off from Google Drive, and if I would do that, but I still enable this cloud save option, next time when I push save, the software will prompt me to log in to any of my Google accounts. And then when I log in, from that point on, the software remembers my account. And then from that point on, I don't need to continuously keep logging in, but the software will just simply keep pushing those files into that account, which it does now. So this is how it works. Now, how can I see what sort of files I have in the cloud?
I was about to ask you that how do you manage seeing the projects that you can download into ARCHLine?
Yes. Well, let's say I would like to show you two things. One is how I can manage versions of this file. So I just make a few changes. I remove these because originally I had this file with this information, and then now I just work with that. I just make changes and I save the project again. The software opens up the upload project option. It uploads the changes and it keeps updating. Parallel to this, I can still work on my drawing. I can push it to the side and I can make changes. And whenever I push save again, then the software will save and push the latest version of my project to the cloud. So it will actually make a queue of my changes and it will push those back up. Why is that important? It is important because then when I, for example, I did something that I would like to recover, but I did not make any sort of local secondary copy on my computer of the previous version. In that case, I go here and I say, okay, tools, let's see what I have in the drive. I go to download. It appeared on the other screen, so it's here. As you can see, we actually saved 2 projects already to your account.
Yes.
That was the grid sample. We will talk about this later. And that was this building behind us. Now I can see that the current size of this project file is this in the cloud. It was the last modification when it was updated.
Yes.
And I can just tell that, well, if this would be not part of my computer here now, because I just logged in another computer, I could download this version. Or in case what I just told you, when I would like to go back to the previous version, I can ask for a history of my changes.
Ah, yes. So the older versions are here too.
Yes. And because I did not change the file name, obviously every file is with the same name. But when I say, okay, I would like to go back 2 minutes before, this is what happened then. Then I click here, and then I can save it. I can tell the software, okay, where to save it. Now, by default, the software will save it in a folder. It's called Cloud Downloads. I can change it where I can even overwrite something that on my computer. I won't do that now. I just save it here. And when I click on Save, now the software downloads that specific version. 2 minutes or now already 4 minutes earlier version. And then when it did, it asked me whether I would like to open it also. And then I just discard this version, which I just have now. Remember, my current version has no tag, but the previous version had a tag. So I just say, okay, yes, close it and go back to the previous version. And then the software just does the math and it finds the perfect version of it. It loads the file and it generates the model.
So is it already downloaded? And now
it is downloaded and now
up,
it actually opens it up. That specific version that I have downloaded, and see now I have the tag. I have all these things that later I have erased and saved with the project. And
so
this is how smooth that works.
So you'd say this would be the place where you could back up your files.
Yes,
for
yes,
safekeeping.
yes. Well, obviously, until the limits of the Google Drive account that you have. So if you have the free account, it is limited to a certain size in gigabytes. But if you pay for the service and get the Google Drive, you can extend the size of the libraries. But you can save quite a nice amount of projects to the Google Cloud if it was not already used by anything else in your account.
Yeah, let's talk a few words about the new export abilities, because I understand something changed that too, and I heard something about the PDF. What did change there?
Well, we will talk about import and export options, and now because we already have something that is in front of us, this specific building. First, I would like to talk about export options. Mm-hmm. Now, imagine that you work with a project file which was originally created as a DWG file. Now, in case of a DWG file, you will very likely get, sooner or later you will get, and in certain countries you will only get this sort of DWG files that are originated from a very, very far origin. So your building is somewhere in your country, and you have an origin that your building is aligned to, which is perhaps, I don't know, a few hundred kilometers away from your building. Now, in that case, when you load that into ARCHLine, you will need to use to be able to properly work with that. You need to use the view and the it's in the edit and move. You will need to use the relocate project origin option. This works a very simple fashion. You will just pick up where you would like to place the origin, usually close to your building, and then you say yes, and then the origin itself moves to that point. Now, it was not far, but it will be definitely at another location.
Okay, but the question is, how do I set it back? Because if I want to make a DXF DWG export, then I need to know the original origin. So
yes.
How do we do that?
So this would be destructive if you wouldn't be able to recover the original and push it back to whatever the source was originally. So for that reason, we have this option here: move and restore project origin. Now, the restore project origin will restore the location of this origin to where it was before I have changed its location. And it actually was, I actually moved it twice, so it was not even here, it was somewhere else. And the way it changes, it actually remembers when you open the DWG file and you first make the change, or you do a second or third change, it will always remember the original, the very, very first one. And when you use this recover option, relocate option, restore project origin option, then the software will restore the original. Now, should you forget this thing, when you export a DWG file, the software will give you a warning message that I realize that you have changed the project origin. Do you want to keep it, or would you like to change it? And in that case, you can say yes, and then you can do what I just did.
Perfect. So this is about the exports. What about the imports? What changed there?
In case of imports, there's a few changes which is very, very useful. Now, when you, for example, would like to work with PDF files, let me just simply open a completely new project, because this is how you usually work with PDF drawings. Then you use them as a basis of your future work. In that case, you go to File and you go to Import and you select PDF. Now, you realize that there is no PDF vector and PDF raster option. Because from this point on, the software recognizes the content of the PDF file, and now I actually have a vector graphic PDF, and I have I just open it here, and I have a raster content. So should I load the raster content, it will be placed as a raster image, or I will actually open the vector graphic content, which is this one. You can see those clean lines. Those are all fine. Just close this. So I load this. In both cases, you will see a dialog opening up like this, and then you can say OK, and then the software actually loads that content, and you will be able to use a kind of scaler, or you can tell whether the current scaling is proper or not. I can just change this from inches to centimeters to meters, for example, and I can tell whether I like this result because it is really what I see on screen. This is kind of a drawing. You can zoom in and out, and you can tell whether the current size is fine or not. Now let's say I'm satisfied with this one. So what I do, I just say OK, and then OK, and then the software loads this content, and from this point on, I can work with this as it was an original DWG file, and I can use the DWG file processor tools to turn these into real literal walls, real literal windows and doors, and then quickly create something of a 3D BIM model out of the plain 2D content.
There's one extra thing about import and export, and that is about the SKP files.
Yes.
I understand well.
Yes, for those
what changed there?
Yeah, for those of you using SKP editors, especially the SketchUp itself, and you have several different versions of SketchUp, this would be a very, very interesting and very useful option. Then whenever you have a model, let me just open this up here. You would like to export this to Google SketchUp. In that case, you can say, okay, I export this as a SketchUp file, and then I just save it somewhere here into, well, I just save it here, and this was the frame, walls, and so on, and say, I just would like to save it. The software creates this save process, and then it tells me, okay, which file version you would like to use, and you can choose whatever. You work together with someone using an older version of Google SketchUp. You just select that option and save it, and then the software will process that, and they will be able to use that file in their current version of Google SketchUp.
Perfect. And the last thing on our list actually is about architectural grids. What are they, and how do we create them in ARCHLine?
Yeah, well, for the architectural grid, let me open up again a completely new project because this will be simpler to represent how it works like on a plain white paper. Now, a grid, an architectural grid is a little bit more than the regular grids that you can turn on and off here. Those are just snap grids, which you can determine in the software how large the gap between the grid points are. In case of an architectural grid, you will use the proper grid tool, the grid creational tool, which is the construction grid. In that case, you can tell this will be actually something literally laid out on your drawing and actually drawn as grid lines. And you can tell on which layer it should be created, on what sort of line type it should be created with, what type of grid you would like to generate with the software. I will just go with this simple rectangular grid. You can set up the text style. This will be for the numbering and leveling. You can set up its representation and how it is laid out with what sort of delta x and delta epsilon with the x and y distances between the grid lines. And then you can tell the software, okay, this actually has, I don't know, let's say 6 by 6 different grid lines, or and in uniform step you can actually just set up all the rhythm inside this whole thing, and I'm just absolutely happy with that. If I would just quickly say okay, then I just accept the properties, but I would like to actually also place a grid like that, so I just click here and I place it, and then now I have a grid with those options. Now, when you move your mouse over any of those, you can actually see that this is not only a simple group, it actually has parts that you can easily select. You can move those things over, and then the software will recognize all those changes. Let me just undo this because I would like to show you another thing as well. So whenever you have this layout, you can move it, you can change the length of these items, and most importantly and interestingly, you can just actually select a bunch of these things and you can change their kind of signing. You can say, okay, instead of A, I should represent AA, and then the software will just, renumber.
So that's how you decide what would be the numbering convention for these grid lines.
Yes. So you can, or at the top you can say 01, 02, 03, or 06. So this is how it works. You can easily do that. And now the greatest thing with this whole grid is that when you would like to work with framed building systems like with columns and beams, in that case, let me just quickly try to sketch something with columns. In that case, you can just place any sort of column. I will just go with the default. I use F5 to change its placement point to the center. and I just place it here. Okay, I'm fine with that. I like this result, and I will just simply select this here, and let's just make I would like to multiply it, and I would like to create five more pieces, and I say, okay, let's just add 5 with the center point, and I just align it to this place here. See the rest is all perfectly aligned to the proper points. Okay, I'm done. And then now I can already represent a very cool advantage of this. Now, the software recognized that I have placed those columns, those actual constructional items onto a grid line. So when I move the grid line, because of any sort of change that I have, the item itself, the architectural item, will follow the change of the grid, which is, I believe, it's a very, very cool and very useful thing to do so without having to change anything. You don't have to even tick an option. The software will automatically do that. Now let's just create something even more complex with more items. So what I will do, I will just again multiply this whole thing again 5 times, and let's say with this point, with its center point, I will just move it and place it here. And to make it a healthy, nice grid-based building, I will also create beams here. So let's just say this beam is starting from here. And instead of
put it to the middle.
Yeah, we should go to the center. I'm just changing it to the bottom middle point like this here. Okay, that's fine. And I just create another one. That's also cool here. So what I do here again, I just make a few more copies. And well, I think I will just make it even more simple. And I just say, okay, multiply this 5 piece, and from this point to this point I will have one unnecessary extra, whatever. I will just erase that. I will change their heights because I don't want to place them on the floor. This is not for foundation, this is for support structure. So I will just select those in the 3D, and I tell the software, okay, for all the beams please use 2,700 around. I think this is a good value. I think that's great. And then I just do all the same thing around, and I just select, this, this, and this. And what I will just simply do. I have another option. I wanted to show you that this is actually something very useful. You can say, okay, select all, and then now the software selects all the beams, but not everything else. Whenever you click on any sort of item and you say select all, the software will select all the beams, all the columns, all the walls. This is very useful. So now I have selected these, and then I say, okay, multiply them again, and say, okay, again 5 copies from this point to this point. I know I have a few extra, no worries. I will just erase those from here. And then the cool thing with this is that it is working with a rather complex structure like this as well. And then let me just create a field inside. Perhaps this is a very specific building with a shape like this here. Later we will fill the rest with all sorts of other information, but this is what I have here. See? Yes. And then now I make changes because we had
for whatever reason you want to tinker around with it.
Meeting talking about the planning system and so on, and then we had make a few changes, and not only the columns themselves, but the beams also follow the changes.
So from this point on, these elements are stitched to the lines, and if you move the lines, the elements would comply.
Yes.
As well.
All the rest, what you can see here is something that you can easily edit. You can change the length of this grid line. You can change the orientation. You can actually graphically change it if you would like to, and you can even rotate it. So should you have something that is rotated, then this should also follow that. So whenever this here is rotated anyway, then the changes will go with that option. Whenever you click on any of these items, like for example, you can find the rotate option, then you can say, okay, I would like to rotate this from here to here, and the software makes those changes, and it is very, very easy to define something which flexible. Is otherwise something that would be very, very tedious to create and make the changes, follow these things. Now the whole thing with this is whenever you place an object without it was
No
aligned to any of these items, even if you place it on the grid line, it is snapped to the grid. But if you place it freely, it won't snap to anything else. But you can tell the software, okay, that this is placed perhaps only by an accident, very, very close, but not onto the grid. It was actually an error. I didn't want it to do that. So in that case, I just go here, and using this local one, I can also align an item. I can tell the software, okay, align this here, and then the software snaps that there. And from this point on, whatever you do with that, again,
can align with the other, and then it goes to the middle point.
Yes. And then you can move it, and it moves. You can change this, and it moves perfectly. This is how it works.
Clever thing. That is actually what we wanted to show you today about the documentation and new features. Obviously, there are a bunch of more things in the 2020 version, but these were the ones that we felt like showing you at the moment, because they are the best, the ones that we are the most proud of.
For this specific topic, because we will have another topic 2 weeks later, which will be...
That will be about the MEP parts. And what is actually MEP? It actually stands for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing elements. Basically, it's all about HVAC, air conditioning, even floor heating systems. So I understand we can create basic systems with our software.
Yes, it is for basic design. The software won't measure and won't make calculations for these systems, but it gives the abilities to the designers to collaborate with professionals building these systems and represent their ideas inside the BIM software, inside an architectural BIM software like ARCHLine.XP, and you can pass that information out to IFC. You can also build up systems like this. In certain countries, it is a must to represent at least the basic HVAC system or a cooling system or whatever with the electric symbols you have to represent on your drawings. We will also talk about how to draw and document electrical switches and the connections between all the light sources wherever you have them in the building. And the software will also be able to tell you that if there is a simple issue with that system, for example, you have forgotten connecting a switch with a light bulb, for example, and the software will give you a warning, and it will also highlight what the problem was with that, and it will help you to fix that.
Very clever. So that's what we are going to have in about 2 weeks. Until then, I would like to thank you for your attention and see you next time.
See you. Goodbye.
If you like this video, then don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel so you are never going to miss another new feature video on the 2020 version of our software.
That's right.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.